And the contract for our leadership community did two things. One is it reinforced this notion of community, that leaders are there not only to reinforce each other, to make sure that we have each other's back, that we support one another, that you're part of something, but also to manifest mutual accountability. That there's a set of standards, and those standards are then enshrined in the leadership contract. What we did subsequent to that was, I think this might be a first, Vince, we were modernizing our brand back in 2018. And so we revisited our mission, vision, values, our operating principles, and we enshrined something called the leadership commitments into the brand. Wow. So they're indivisible. So what we expect of the leaders at Canadian Blood Services is indivisible from what you need to do to achieve the mission and vision and live the values of the organization. So we feel that's very, very powerful. And so the notion of a contract, which we just ended up calling commitments, is a three-part commitment that leaders make. So it's enshrined in the nomenclature. And wow. our broader language is the tagline was head and heart leadership. I know there's not anything new or original about that, but it deeply resonated with our employees because we were giving them permission to be empathetic, to be thoughtful, to nurture, to be authentic. At the same time, be committed to meeting measurable targets, to set rigorous and ambitious goals, all of those things wrapped together in one. So what I would say, what we're asking leaders to do now, to get back to your original question, Vince, is we've discovered we do not need to revisit or rethink or redo those leadership commitments. They remain as relevant then as they are now. However, we will ask leaders, there will be a few of the components of the leadership commitments that will say, maybe for the next 18 months, we're going to double click on some of these more than others.
Yeah.
And our double clicks now for leaders are two things. One is we have a piece of our leadership commitment around visibility. We call it go and see. And as we come out of the pandemic, we're saying to leaders, it's important that you go and see. You go to your teams, you go to other teams, you see what they're doing, you hear them, you understand what their operational challenges are, and you work with them to solve problems. That there's a period of time where visibility, going and seeing, is going to be fundamental. The other part is about creating an inclusive and healthy work environment.
Yeah.
We know that for both our unionized and non-unionized employees, they've experienced an extraordinary degree of psychological stress for a variety of reasons, which are familiar to all of us who work in this space. And we're saying we need to begin to nurture that space, create a situation where people are well, don't stuff too much into the funnel so that the bandwidth can't do the work that's required of us. And I'd add a third point, actually, cycling back to what I mentioned earlier, this notion of a culture, this notion of the way we do things. I feel, and we feel as an executive team, that all organizations have lost a step or two in terms of what their culture means. That there's been a slight degradation, for maybe not all organizations, but certainly in ours, where folks aren't as attuned to the North Star as they might have been when it was part of the organizational conversation. Yeah. So leaders need to find other ways of creating those conversations with their teams, bringing them together in the right way, and modeling the behaviors that we want leaders to demonstrate.